So Chavon Clarke-Joell, author of The Digital Polycrisis, presents an innovative approach to navigate a complex digital world. Her perspective stems from a background in psychology, cognitive neuroscience, creative arts, and integrative nutrition health coaching. Certified prompt engineer, International Association of Privacy Professionals, certified information privacy professional, and certified generative AI expert with AI ethics certification from London School of Economics and Political Science. Chavon blends AI ethics, data protection, psychology, and wellness to address digital challenges. She writes questions for the IAPP Certified Information Privacy Technologist, CIPM, and AI Governance Professional Certification exam, underscoring her expertise in AI ethics, privacy, and cybersecurity governance. As co-founder of the UK and Bermuda-based entity, the Technical, Legal, and Regulatory Compliance Group of Companies, and founder of CKC Cares, Chavon fosters connections and empowers minds through content creation, knowledge sharing, and advocacy. She also works with R&D projects focused on inclusion, accessibility, and ethics in Black, Indigenous, and people of color, healthcare and fitness AI technologies, including V-Fitness and Eva Care. Her past roles include General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR consultant, Data Protection Officer, and Assistant Commissioner and Head of Innovation AI and Emerging Technology at Bermuda's Office of the Privacy Commissioner. Recognized among the 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics for 2024, Chavon serves as Director of International Development for Women in AI Africa. She's affiliated with Mission Impact Academy and is an Associate Lecturer at Business Professional People, University of London, an institute in central London that focuses on both theory and practical acumen for real-world application. In October 2024, CJ will be moderating the How Can AI Continue to Stay Ahead of Cybersecurity Threats posed by AI panel at the World Summit AI in Amsterdam. A sought-after speaker, Chavon advocates for an empathetic tech landscape. The Digital Polycrisis. The Digital Polycrisis book exemplifies her holistic approach to navigating technological change while maintaining well-being. Please join me to welcome CJ as she makes her presentation. You're very much welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Helen. I appreciate you. And I'm just so excited today. Good afternoon to all of the educators that are with me. I'm just setting up my screen here, that are here today. I'm just really excited to be amongst you and have this conversation. It's such an important one, of course, and to really talk about it in what I think is just as key, is really putting it into context and really understanding where some of those challenges may lie in higher education, particularly in Africa and in Nigeria. With familial and personal interest in Africa and higher education, I am honored to join you today, virtually from Athens, Greece. It's a long story there, but I'm excited that I can still be a part of the event to discuss this topic on how digital tertiary education landscape is changing with artificial intelligence and its implications in data protection and privacy. These things are so important as we look at ethics and sustainability of AI in higher education. Today, I aim to explore AI bias from a global perspective, then narrow our focus to African and Nigerian contexts. We'll examine types of bias, their impact on higher education, emerging privacy concerns, concerns and strategies for mitigation. My ultimate goal is to provide you with insights and food for thought, I like to say, that bridge current challenges and concerns with key considerations in AI adoption for education. So we will tuck in first looking at types of AI bias, and then we will go into sources of AI bias. We generally see these three types of AI bias. Algorithmic bias, of course, occurs when AI, the design or the training processes lead to biased outcomes. And it's often a result of flawed logic or decision-making rules embedded in the AI algorithm itself. I'm sorry, in the algorithm itself, I should say. Data bias. This happens when the training data contains historical or systemic biases, inaccuracies, or it just is not representative of the target population. And here, of course, the AI learns and replicates these biases over time. And then we have interaction bias. And here AI systems can develop biases over time based on interactions with users. So a chatbot might learn and replicate biased language or even behavior from user interactions. Now, these biases, they tend to stem from four main sources. We touched on historical bias, and this that's used to train AI systems. For instance, if historical hiring data reflect gender bias in any way, an AI hiring system might perpetuate that bias. Sampling bias, of course, this occurs when the training data is not representative of the actual population. And so if facial recognition software is trained mostly on images of lighter-skinned individuals, it might not perform as best on darker-skinned individuals if it does not have that sample to rely on. Measurement bias. Now, this happens when parameters and the not accurately reflect the concepts they're meant to measure. And so in Nigerian higher education, measurement bias can occur, include cultural references and idiomatic expressions more familiar to urban students. This can unfairly disadvantage rural students, not truly reflecting their English proficiency and leading to biased academic outcomes and potential loss of opportunities. Now, this, of course, has compounding impacts and societies at large. These are profound. Aggregation bias, the last one I'm talking about here, it occurs when data from different sources are combined without considering context or differences in data distribution. In African higher education, this can happen when institutions adopt the European General Data Protection Regulation principles without considering local, cultural, and behavioral differences. This could lead to ineffective data protection measures and compliance issues. So again, this is quite serious for us to consider as we explore AI in these environments, of course, in higher education. A global example, a really well-known global example of historical bias is the Amazon's AI recruiting tool, which you may have heard of. It showed bias against women because it was trained on historically male-dominated hiring data. And so the business decided to pull this tool away for a bit so that it could really explore how it could, be more inclusive in its workforce. An example that may feel a bit closer to Africa is a 2020 study by the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights that found that facial recognition technologies had significantly higher error rates for people of African descent, with some systems misidentifying darker faces 5 to 10 times more often than whiter faces. And when I travel, and I travel quite a bit, again, I'm in Athens, right? But I live in London, and I'm from Bermuda, so I travel quite a bit. And sometimes even going into the bathroom at the airport and you're drying your hands, sometimes it doesn't work. It's because it's sometimes because of different types of technology that has identified or doesn't quite understand. I can't remember where I was traveling recently, but all of it, to use the soap dispenser, to use everything, was all generated using some type of technology. And it didn't recognize myself and some of the people I was traveling with. And so these things are quite serious. It demonstrates how sampling biases, sampling bias in AI training data can lead to discriminatory. Right. So yes, when we look at some of these studies that have occurred in a global sense, we have to really consider how it applies to us in our regions. You wouldn't believe I practiced this numerous times this afternoon. It's amazing how technology can sometimes just not work with us, right? So thank you again for your patience and an example of what I call the digital polycrisis. So yeah, okay, here we go. Okay. So yeah, when I was just saying here that a lot of the technology, it was not designed, it wasn't built in Africa or in Nigeria. Many of them were developed outside, abroad, in other countries, and they're adopted in our institutions. And they can already have what I call imported bias, right? Because these are biases that existed through the development of these products, or perhaps it's based on bias of not, again, in having enough sampling data that is relevant to Nigeria and to African contexts. And of course, this could exacerbate existing inequalities in our educational system. So on this slide that you see here, in admissions, AI systems, of course, as you can imagine, could seriously perpetuate those historical biases. And that could lead to a range of disadvantages to underrepresented groups. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB or JAM, has implemented AI-powered systems to detect examination malpractice. Now, while this is super innovative, and I love innovation, as you can tell, we must ensure these systems don't unfairly flag students based on biased data or algorithms. In grading and assessment, automated systems might favor particular writing styles or linguistic patterns. Many universities use Turnitin, and Turnitin has been around for some time. But many don't know that it is now very much driven by AI-powered plagiarism detection tools. So as you use it, AI is involved in collecting some of the information you're adding to the tool. While it is effective, it sometimes struggles with content in local languages or contexts, potentially unfairly flagging work that may be using Nigerian expressions or references. In the aftermath of COVID-19, in the aftermath of COVID-19, institutions like, of course, the National Open University of Nigeria now, and many others, they expanded their use of AI-enhanced learning management systems, or LMS. These platforms are brilliant. I've worked with LMS quite often, AI-powered ones. I've built some of the courses and other certifications through the TLC group using LMS systems, so I'm not against them. But I will say that these platforms may use AI to personalize learning paths and provide automated feedback. Now, we must ensure that these systems cater to diverse learning styles and backgrounds of some students, whether they are, of course, challenges that one may have in ensuring that the system is able to support them or identify them, and even flagging when there are times when we need to be much more supportive of a student that might be using an LMS system. So it's really about ensuring that the tools and the solutions that we adopt and deploy in our educational environments, that they have human oversight in every area. They consider diversity and the unique context of Nigerian and African students, and that there are clear redress steps available should a student or employee or faculty have concerns about the use and the decisions that are made via AI-powered systems and tools. As AI systems become more sophisticated, they're beginning to interact with neurodata, information that's collected directly from brain activity. This is an area that I'm very passionate and interested in. As Helen mentioned, I studied cognitive neuroscience, and so it ties in with all of this, with neuroethics and neuroprivacy as well. While this might sound quite futuristic, I'm sorry to say it's closer than we think and has significant implications for privacy and data protection. Globally, companies like Neuralink are developing brain-computer interfaces. And while promising for medical applications, these can raise serious privacy and security concerns. Imagine if an AI could read a student's brain activity during an exam. The ethical implications are enormous. There is growing controversy over who owns the data generated or belonging to African students, faculty, and staff when using these globally developed AI systems and collecting data along the way. This data ownership issue is a critical ethical, privacy, and security concern that needs urgent attention. And the unknown use of AI. Again, many students, many faculty, educators, many institutions are using tools and solutions, and they don't even realize that how AI works or how it is collecting information, using information, sharing information. Internet of Things come into play, how its information is being transferred to other devices. They don't realize what's going on here. And so this poses serious risks to data sovereignty and protection. While Nigeria has made strides with the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, NDPR, in 2019, the local and global regulatory landscape is still developing. As we adopt more advanced educational technologies, we have to ensure that student data privacy and security becomes increasingly protected, because it's becoming increasingly complex. When we look at academic integrity and AI tools, those things are important as well. And so I'm just getting ahead of myself with the conversation. Here, I was just talking again, and the key part I want to draw to is that middle part with data storage. Where is student and faculty data stored? Is it subject to foreign laws? And when we talk about storing, again, is it being stored in some of these AI systems? So when we look at academic integrity and AI tools, the release of ChatGPT sent shockwaves through global academia. I'm sure it was felt in Nigeria as well. It challenged traditional notions of academic integrity and assessment. In Nigeria, these challenges are compounded by uneven access to some of these tools as well. How do we ensure fairness when some students have access to these tools and AI assistance, but others don't? We don't want to stifle innovation and student growth, but we must balance that with accessibility and inclusion. Babcock University piloted an AI system to predict student performance and identify those at risk of dropping out. While potentially beneficial, we must be cautious about biases in these predictive models that could unfairly impact students' educational journeys. It's important to note that AI, of course, doesn't just impact students. It also affects you as educators, as lecturers. AI tools could potentially assist in many ways in lecture preparation, in grading, even in generating some teaching materials. With this, it can increase efficiency, but it also raises questions that many educators have in terms of changing roles. How do we ensure that AI enhances rather than replaces the crucial human elements of teaching? As higher education continues to evolve, we'll need to navigate this changing landscape, balancing both the benefits of AI with the irreplaceable value of human expertise, mentorship, and the nuanced understanding of your students' needs. What I'd like to do is talk a bit about mitigation strategies and ethical framework for lecturers as I come to a close. As lecturers, you are likely on the front lines of safe and responsible AI adoption and use in higher education. In my book, The Digital Polycrisis that Helen mentioned, and thank you for that, I discuss sunset and sunrise mentalities. I discuss it through the lens of industry, governments, organizations, and people. So when we talk about sunset and sunrise mentalities in relation to AI exploration and adoption, we really need to consider how we're finding that balance, where we're not being left behind, or we're not ignoring, with lack of a better word, but ignoring the needs of our students and the change that's happening in society because we're too afraid or we just don't want to move forward. We have to be careful and make sure that we are doing it in a responsible way. And so sunset educators risk becoming obsolete or losing opportunities or feeling lost by ignoring AI's potential, potentially even failing their students and society, because education it moves, it's different from what it was years ago. It continues to evolve. And so it's so important, of course, that educators are able to not necessarily keep up fully with the pace, but you're at least open enough to explore in a safe way. And so that's where we talk about sunrise educators. These are educators that cautiously embrace AI while continuously adapting to change. As Nigerian lecturers, you have a responsibility, as we all do as global educators, to support your students and society and to adopt what I call a sunrise approach. Now, this means critically engaging with AI tools, understanding their potential and limitations, and continuously evolving your teaching methods. By doing so, you ensure your students are prepared for a world where AI is increasingly prevalent. In my book, I talk quite a bit about AI across different industries. It's at a high level because the book is a reference tool. That's what's important. It's not a sit down and read the whole book at one time. It's, can you stomach this? Well, read this bit. When you're ready for this, come back and read that. So I just want to explain that about the digital polycrisis. But of course, by doing so, you're ensuring that you are helping your students to be prepared for a world, I call it the age of AI, while also maintaining that irreplaceable human elements in education. And so there are strategies that I'm going to end with that can help you, that you can implement in your work. One, I mentioned critically evaluate AI tools. Before adopting, using, exploring any AI system in your teaching, be sure to assess its potential biases and limitations, especially considering it in Nigerian contexts. Promote AI literacy. Incorporate discussions about AI ethics and bias into your curriculum. Help students become critical consumers of AI. And then you want to really think about diversifying assessment methods. Combine AI-assisted grading with human evaluation to ensure fair assessment of diverse student work. Only a human would be able to identify some of these when it comes to diversity and understand whether it's still within the scope of the objectives of learning. And so it's a marriage, so to speak, or a relationship, so to speak, with AI in that way. You want to advocate for transparency, so push for clear explanation of how AI systems are used in your institution from admission through to learning management. Engaging in continuous learning, staying informed, collaborating across disciplines, so working with colleagues in computer science, ethics, sociology, psychology, provide feedback. Your perspective is important when it comes to AI development and the administration. So join focus groups if you're called upon to ask how these systems could improve or support your institution. Think about ethical frameworks and develop your own ethical framework for your class or your subject content. And those things should include thinking about student data protection and privacy, fairness and inclusivity in AI-assisted teaching and assessment, transparency, of course, in AI use. And I like to say a two-way street. So what is acceptable for students to do? Is it just no, they can't use it at all? Because they may be using it anyway. If you say don't use it at all, right? They may be using it to write their papers. So maybe if we say you can use it for research, but not to write the paper, they better understand how to manage the use of it. And finally, maintaining the human element wherever possible in education for oversight, for diversity in research and development, and to manage the fairness and opportunities AI may offer students. Your framework should be flexible enough to address current needs and anticipate future challenges. And I see my time's up, so I'm just gonna conclude here with my final slide. AI does offer immense potential, lots of exciting potential for transforming higher education, but again, it also presents significant challenges. As educators in Nigeria, we have a unique opportunity and responsibility to shape the adoption of AI in your institution, ensuring that it serves the needs of your students and protects their data rights. I encourage you to continue exploring these issues. My book, The Digital Polycrisis, offers quite a bit of insight into these topics, including emerging trends like neuroprivacy and strategies for navigating complex digital landscapes. I thank you for your attention today. Forgive me for the technical glitch that took some of my time.
That's all right. Thank you so much, CJ. That was quite insightful. We'll talk more about that after the next presentation. Wish you could continue, but because we have two presentations for this session. And so quickly,
I apologize again just, for the delay.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to say something about Paul Prinsloo's biography, his citation. We've got a short, not a short one. He's got a long bio, but it's sent a very short form for this project, for this presentation. Is Paul in? Oh, thank you so much. All right. Paul Prinsloo is currently a research professor in open and distance e-learning in the Department of Business and Business Management and at the College of Economic and Management Sciences, University of South Africa. He's a visiting professor at the National Open University of Nigeria. He's a research associate for Contact North, Canada, a member of the Center for Open Educational Research at the Karl von Ossietzky University of Oldenburg in Germany. He's a senior fellow of the European Distance Education and E-Learning Network. He's an elected member of the Eden Fellow Board and serves on several editorial boards. Paul has published numerous articles in the fields of teaching and learning, student success in distributed learning context, the ethical collection, analysis, and use of student data in learning analytics and digital identities. And Paul is a very adventurous spirit. I can say that. I can say that about him. You're welcome, please. Please unmute and make your presentation.
Thank you very much, Felix. Let's go there. And I couldn't have hoped for better. Let me just share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I couldn't have wished for better introduction and scoping the landscape than CJ. Thanks, CJ. That was brilliant. Let's start. I have 20 minutes and some thoughts. I would like to start to say I don't own the copyright of any of the images of this presentation, and I acknowledge the original copyright and licensing regime of every image used. And later you will see why this is increasingly important. So this presentation, excluding the images, is licensed under Creative Commons license. So I acknowledge the artist, creator of every image used in this presentation, and then none of the ideation and text in this presentation has been generated by ChatGPT in all its variations. I'm proudly human. And again, you will see why this is increasingly important to acknowledge which part of your presentation was produced by what type of generative AI or large language model. This is just a brief overview of my hit and run. So more than just ChatGPT, the stories that are told, many CJ refer to not neutral, unintelligent AI, anthropomorphism, or the fact that we talk about AI in human terms, unintelligent and thirsty, humans in the value chain of AI, democratizing AI, and depersonalization of learning, knowledge, knowing, and coming to know, and some in-conclusions. And I will be out of breath by the end of the session. So let's start. So change and the challenges we are facing is so much more than ChatGPT, colleagues. It's so much more than plagiarism and how to work with Gen AI. So if you think of the student learning journey from pre-enrollment, from registration, from non-academic engagement, course engagement, and post-registration or re-registration, we will have algorithmic agents that can inform or distort every step of the way. And CJ referred to some instances where AI is used to determine which students have access to what type of services or qualifications, what students receive extra support or not. So this is the general AI can inform the whole learning journey, and not only we should consider it not only with regard to ChatGPT, but the whole journey. So what the question we need to ask for ourselves is not whether we should use Gen AI, but under what conditions? And for what reasons can Gen AI be used to enhance the quality of the different processes in higher education? What do we win and what do we lose? And once again, what CJ said, who wins and who loses in this process? So we need to think ethics the whole time. So considering that, then, we should also consider when Gen AI should not be used. And I think that's almost as important as learning to use Gen AI. And I think that's one of my criticisms against many of the artificial intelligence literacy frameworks, whether for educators or school managers. We should also know when not to use Gen AI and why. And there's a range of controversies and biases that can shape students' learning journey in several unpredictable, negative, and unaccountable ways, from registration up to re-registration or post-enrollment. And I'm trying to show you or share with you some of the controversies according to my understanding. The basis for my presentation is what are the stories that are being told about AI in and education? Who are the persons and interests behind these stories, the stories that are left out? And many of them CJ referred to, and I love her presentation. So what stories are not told? Who are not telling stories, the stories that are censored, the stories that need to be told? It is also about, and these stories also tell us about what kind of futures are imagined, and who and what are included in these futures, and who and what does not form part of these futures. And I selected this image intentionally to point out that currently AI and the use of AI in various settings benefit those that are already privileged of a certain race and in a particular context. It's also crucial to ask who is telling these stories. So if Ethan Malik is posting something, or is CJ is posting something, or is Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk posting something about AI, I need to know who they are, because it shapes the stories. What are their interests in selling AI to education? What are their histories of telling stories about AI? How do they benefit from when students, educators, universities, and governments accept their imaginaries, accept their stories as a truth? We need to ask these type of questions. We also need to ask what other stories are there, stories that need to be told, to be investigated, that may lead to different possibilities, a different kind of humanity, more just, more sustainable, and more equal. So that's just introduction. So what are the stories being told about AI in education in the world and in Nigeria? You see here 3 recent examples of AI in the context of Nigeria and the stories that are being told about AI in education. Very important is no technology is neutral, not the blackboards that we used to use, not the books, not the pens, nothing is not political. So we need to understand AI as a knot of social, political, economic, and cultural agendas that is riddled with complications, contradictions, and conflicts. So what are the social implications of AI in education, colleagues? What are the political implications? What are the economic, the cultural agendas? We need, in our literacy of educators, in our literacy programs, we need to highlight and open up these conversations, say who benefits under what conditions and who are excluded. Let's talk about unintelligent AI. And this is a very personal view, but is backed up by research, and I'm sure CJ, with her background in neuroscience, will back me up on this. Understanding and intelligence is shaped by context, by choices of generations before now, as is found in our DNA and wrapped up in a combination of emotion, biology, circumstances, and some irrational thinking. Intelligence, human intelligence, is much more than skills or the brilliance of formulating intelligent and human-sounding sentences and calculations. And I'm supported in my view by Luciano Floridi of the Oxford Internet Institute. He speaks about AI as agency without intelligence. And the references are there, and if you have difficulty with accessing the article, let me know. In another article, he refers to the origins of AI, and I know that was covered in the first and possibly the second weeks, but he refers to it that the inventor, or the person that claimed the term, John McAfee, said he invented it because we had to do something when we were trying to get money for a summer study in 1956. And he suggests at the end of that quote, we agreed to call it automata studies, the study of automation, but that was not sexy. That would not have got funding. So again, Floridi, he says, while ChatGPT can generate contextually appropriate responses, it's important to note that it does not have true understanding, consciousness, or awareness. It operates based on statistical associations learned from data and lacks general comprehension or intelligence, intentionality. We should not overestimate what we're dealing with. Again, he said, I would not consider a pocket calculator intelligent, and I don't consider ChatGPT intelligent either. He says the smartphone plays better chess than anyone else in this room, I bet, but it has zero intelligence. And I think this needs to be drilled down. This needs to be shared with our students and our educators. One of my favorite philosophers, social scientists, linguists, Noam Chomsky, he talks about the false promise of ChatGPT. And he says the human mind is not like ChatGPT, and it's a lumbering statistical engine for pattern matching. Ouch! gorging on hundreds of terabytes of data and extrapolating the most likely conversational response or probable answer to a scientific question. He says, no, the human mind is surprisingly efficient and even elegant, that operates with small amounts of information. I find this beautiful. So ChatGPT and other large language models are basically a statistical engine for pattern matching, gorging on hundreds of terabytes of data. And it sounds human, and it sounds nice, and it's written in a particular English, which we consider to be a good English. So he suggests let's stop calling it artificial intelligence then, and call it for what it is and what it makes. It's plagiarism software. Ouch! It does not create anything but copies existing words of existing artists, modifying them enough to escape copyright laws. And there's a number of law cases in process as we speak. So when we speak about AI and Gen AI, we should be careful not to refer to it as a tutor, as a study buddy, as a dialogue partner. It cannot think, so we should stop referring to these AI tools as being human replacements, or that they can be a buddy or a partner. So he refers in this article that there's a borrowing between artificial intelligence and brain and cognitive sciences. And he says that AI acquires unwarranted biological and cognitive properties that taint its understanding in society. And a case in point is machine learning. So this situation, the fact that we talk about AI as if it was human, I remember when I tried ChatGPT for the first time, I phrased my prompt, and please don't laugh, I phrased my prompt as, can you please do this? Thank you, Paul. And it's not human. So we should see ChatGPT for what it is. And the fact that we attribute human qualities to the statistical tool generates confusion in those who do not know better and believe that AI is intelligence. In those that know better but have faith that AI will create some super intelligent systems, and in those who may or may not know better but do not care and exploit the confusion for their purposes and interests, often financial. So there it's unintelligent, the thirsty. We cannot ignore the impact. Thank you for those red lines, Sion. We cannot ignore the fact that Gen AI and the increase in the use of artificial intelligence has huge impact on sustainability and our environmental crisis. This is just Google and Microsoft now consume more power than some fairly big countries. You will see Nigeria, and then Google and Microsoft is there in the middle. This is an interesting article. Please look at it. It's not only that the use of AI and its impact on the environment, but it impacts differently in different contexts. So a data center in a water-scarce country like South Africa or Zimbabwe will have huge impact on the environment, while in that water-rich environment, it may have less environmental impact. This was published about a month ago, and I leave that for you. It says the impact of AI on carbon emissions varies across countries, and its effect on carbon reduction is mainly found in high carbon emission and high income countries, and you know what that means for the developing South. Then secondly, the infra-industrial structure environment of different countries affect the role of AI in carbon reduction. And then the impact of AI, and this is very interesting, varies in countries based on their different demographic structures. So older populations have less emissions and they use AI less. Where are the humans in the value chain? This is going to be published in July, I think, by Professor Mark Graham of the Internet Oxford Institute, Feeding the Machine. He says there's millions of underpaid workers in the global South powering AI. That accounts, their work accounts for 80% of machine learning. And you can read on the right-hand side, and then he says, much of the discussion about AI has been focused on existential risk that it might present in the medium to long-term future. However, the real risk of AI are already right here and the present. So we cannot ignore the fact that AI, despite the fact that it sounds automatic and automated, it isn't a machine. It's an army of underpaid, unheard, exploited workers. So most of these workers are in the global south, and specifically Kenya and other African countries. This was published in the Guardian UK newspaper on the 6th of July. Meet Mercy and Anita, the African workers driving the AI revolution for just over $1 an hour. And this quote from the article really struck me. By using AI products, we are directly inserting ourselves into the lives of workers dispersed across the globe. We are connected whether we like it or not. Just as drinking a cup of coffee implicates the coffee drinker in the global production network from bean to cup, we should all understand how using a search engine, a chatbot, or even something as simple as a smart robot vacuumer sets in motion global flows of data and capital that connect workers, organizations, and consumers in every corner of the planet. Your students should know that every prompt they write to ChatGPT has somewhere in Africa, African workers that work for less or just about $1 an hour. We almost there. So in the last 4 minutes, let's look at the last 3 claims. There's a huge claim that AI will democratize education and that we should democratize AI through education. And this was published by Sega and her colleagues on the 29th of August last year. And they say, what do we talk about when we say democratizing AI or democratizing education using AI? Will we democratize the use of AI, getting more people from other strata of society to use AI? Will we include more women in the development of AI and more African workers? Interesting. Will we democratize AI profits? No. But so when we talk about the democratization of AI, we need to ask, how will we profit? And in the democratization of AI governance, at the moment, the global south is excluded. And this is an equally wonderful article by Raul. He says, will we democratize data? Will we democratize storage and computing? Will we democratize the development of algorithms, model development? And will we democratize the use, exchange, and monetization of data? So what do we mean? And this, for me, is important. The democratization of AI in, of, and through education cannot be in the hands of venture capital, shareholders, and private interests. That's not democracy. Why we trust OpenAI and Microsoft and all of these to talk about democracy, I don't know. I don't get it. Now, the big thing for me is knowledge knowing and coming to know. So when this was launched, Peter Gluckman said, at that stage, he called it a fancy web scraping tool. How does the automation of knowledge production, or at least the automation of knowledge claims, change our understanding of knowledge and change how we verify these claims and knowledge? So this was said, and I think this is, for me, one of the most scary quotes about ChatGPT. It will redefine human knowledge and accelerate changes in the fabric of our reality and reorganize politics and society. It's like replacing the SIM card and the operating system of your phone. So this was one of the first diagrams, that there's a natural language query that is put into this knowledge base that makes sense of your knowledge query and prepare a human sounding response. It's fed back and you get the answer, and there's also reinforcement learning. But I have a problem with the use of data. It's not a knowledge base, it's data. It's not knowledge, it's data. And it's not a response, it's a knowledge claim that are reinforced. So where in the past we used to engage with the real world, we did research, we used science, we used tools to understand the real world and understand one another to make knowledge claims. And the moment we made a knowledge claim, it was fed back to the peer review and community and scientific scrutiny and validation. So now we have knowledge produced by this digital world. We don't engage with the real world anymore, but with the digital world. And the knowledge claims that ChatGPT produces, again, ChatGPT doesn't produce knowledge, it produces knowledge claims, which is never verified. It is never fed to a scientific peer review process. So I'm 4 slides down. So Antoinette Robert talks about, she's a French philosopher, legal scholar. She talks about this age, and this was published in 2013. For me, this is amazing. So she talks about the age where knowledge is automatically discovered. So knowledge is not produced about the world anymore, but from the digital world. And I'm still grappling to understand what this actually means for all of us. For me, this is important. So we are spared the burden of testing, questioning, examining, evaluating actual facts and persons of flesh and blood. So we are spared this. ChatGPT does all of this. We just write a prompt. So machine learning metabolizes the world with an automatic curiosity, which reflect the particular sectoral rationalities of the interests they serve. And we should ask, which interests do they serve? And it also absolves the human actors. There's no author. It was just ChatGPT. So we cannot put ChatGPT under peer review. We cannot put ChatGPT in a court of law. It was just automatically produced. So it spares us meaning-making processes. So when you decide to use ChatGPT for a literature review, it absolves you from making meaning, colleagues. So just because it's faster, what do we lose in the process? And what is scary for me, these new knowledge claims produced by ChatGPT will not necessarily be verified, but they will become operational. The answer they produce is fed into a system and is being taken as knowledge. So Rouveau said we've become lazy. We rely more and more on algorithm, even though they function according to a type of rationality that is no longer our own and decides for us. So some closing thoughts. So knowing, knowledge, and coming to know have been and are being reconfigured. So be informed, be critical. Gen AI is not going anywhere soon. Using ChatGPT is not inevitable. You don't have to. Your students don't have to. We have choices, other choices, human choices. Stop anthropomorphizing Gen AI. It's not a study buddy. It's not an editor. It can do editing according to a prescribed global North model of English, but it's not an editor. It's not a tutor. It's not a co-designer. It's not a motivator. It's not an assessor. Knowledge cannot be automatically discovered. We need to slow down. Why are we in a hurry? Why do we need to think about how can I quicker do a literature review, or how can I do an analysis quicker and more speedier? We are facing a crisis of a new regime of truth, and it requires criticality, validation, and accountability. And then intentionally acknowledge and celebrate authorship, human creativity, sources, and intellectual property rights. Just depersonalization of learning so to what extent is a personalization of learning driven by North Atlantic ontology, where the individual is disconnected from others and where the individual's aspirations are worth more than to the flourishing of the community? In early African indigenous communities, it was and continued to be impossible to think of the individual without her community, Ubuntu. And now we want to personalize everything where the individual doesn't need the community anymore. I'm going to leave the slides with the team, so I'm going to skip over the next 3 slides. This is just important. So learning is inherently social and relational. in collaborative filtering, where I'm being given readings or support based on my allegiance to a specific group, changes in a group may affect what I get as choices. And in content filtering, the individual is locked into his or her past behaviors, creating bubbles prisons. So that's Amazon, that's Netflix. It gives me recommendations of my past, but I'm more than my past. So personalization can segment the population so that only some segments are worth of receiving some opportunities, and discriminatory analytics, as CJ has spoken about that. For me, this is important. The individual's autonomy in making decisions is disrespected and ignored. I don't want personalization. And informational diversity is an enabling condition for autonomy. Just in conclusions, last slide, while criticism asserts that something is wrong, critics unmask in order to judge. Critique brings an ethical dimension to bear and aspires less to unmask falsehood than to compel its audience to see matters in a different but not necessarily truer light. So, colleagues, we need to slow down, rapidly slow down our pace of discussions in the face of this fast-moving, rapidly changing, and often ephemeral nature of the topic. Thank you very much. Apologies for going a bit over time.
Thank you very much, Professor Paul Prinsloo. Someone just told me, they said that is vintage for Prinsloo as we know him. Thank you so much to both presenters, CJ, Dr. Chavon, Clarke-Joell, and then Professor Paul Prinsloo for such insightful presentations. So we have only 2 people interested in asking questions. Thank you very much. So please, Elizabeth Ojo, please unmute yourself and ask your question and specify the person you are directing it to. Please go straight to the question.
Okay, thank you very much, our coordinator. I'm directing my question to the second presenter, Professor Paul Prinsloo. What I want to know is, I didn't really get the last part of his of what he was trying to say. What is he trying to say, that we should slow down on the way we use AI or ChatGPT, that we should slow down on our use of it, or was he trying to say towards the end? I didn't really get what he was trying to tell us. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure he has taken note of your question. He will answer it. Israel Taiwo, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Before you ask your question, I've taken the next 2 questioners are Olubunmi Joseph, Fadipe Joseph, then Daniel Ama Abasi. Those are the 4 questions we'll take for this session. Israel Taiwo, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you so much, Felix. My question also goes to Professor Paul, and I'm a bit curious about the conclusion which he made concerning the slowing down process. Now, I see AI and generative AI in particular as calculator, useful for arithmetic. So just as we use calculators for arithmetic, that is the same way I see some of these tools for research, for education, and all of that. And I'm afraid that if people don't learn the use of some of these AI tools, it becomes challenging for them to be able to use them effectively in the future. So I just want to have his perspective on some of these things, or they might be left behind if they are not leveraging some of these tools. That's my personal opinion, and I want Professor Paul to please react on this. Thank you.
What's your question specifically?
I would want him to react to the use of generative AI as a research tool in academics, in education, because I personally feel like if people don't use it, for example, is advising we slow down. If people don't use it, it will seem like somebody refusing to use calculators for arithmetic, and we know what they do. And that's the same way I see AI doing. Thank you.
I'm sure he has taken note of that question. So Olubunmi Fadipe, your question should be to CJ.
Thank you. My question is to CJ.
Okay.
She said that the UN study revealed 5 to 10 times higher error rates for darker faces in facial recognition systems. And I believe that that finding is referring to African, the blacks. So what could have been responsible for that? Then the second one is about Turnitin. Can we have an indigenous Turnitin?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sure CJ has taken note of that question. Daniel Ama Abasi.
In using AI for student assessment, it is quite possible to do that with multiple choice questions. But how will it be like if you are to use essay in student assessment? How do we use AI and essay questions in student assessment?
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Daniel Abbas. Thank you for your question. CJ, do you want to take it first, or do you want Paul to start?
I don't mind at all. Okay, right. So thank you, Ms. Helen, for, I believe this is the question, right? What is responsible for the high rate of facial recognition issue? Right? So that would be, again, the sampling bias. It's not enough. It's not enough samples or enough research done or inclusion of different complexions of skin or different cultures or different diversity in general. That's the bottom line, right? It's not enough of it for fairness in these spaces. That's where it would typically come from in a short answer, if that's okay. And then in terms of, yes, you're absolutely right. Multiple choice is quite easy. Of course, the use of AI when it comes to essay questions, a lot of it, again, would probably be built in key parameters of what would be expected, what is a good answer in that essay. But this is my point. I don't know if you're a professor, Emma Abasi, is it? Daniel? You asked the question, right? Yeah. Hello to you. But yeah, like when you think about this is why it's so important for that human oversight, right? I would never, I actually quite agree with Professor Paul, when he talks about the fact that, we need to slow down in a way to be able to identify how AI should be used, what's your comfort, I like to say, what's your comfort zone, right? What your comfort level is and what you expect from your students. So when it comes to essay writing, maybe there are some key hints or indicators of what it means to be a good response, but I wouldn't leave it alone with AI. I would still have that human oversight so that you could determine if it is answering that question effectively. So hopefully that answers your question.
I agree with you.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, CJ. Paul?
Sorry, she didn't answer my second question. Turnitin indigenous.
Yes,
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Can we have an indigenous Turnitin?
Could there be an indigenous Turnitin? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, for Nigerians or for Africa.
I mean, anything's possible. You'd have to contact Turnitin and see if you could work with them to establish what that might look like in Nigerian context. But many entities may be open to working with, with groups or organizations, especially educational institutions, to try to streamline it or to tailor it, I should say, to a particular jurisdictional region. So it's something to consider. But I can't answer that. It would definitely be a Turnitin question, if you know what I mean.
And then, of course, Paul has offered a guidance there to say that don't work with Turnitin, develop your own, keep owning the content and profits on the African soil. That's a suggestion from him. Paul, do you want to unmute and answer the other questions?
Thank you very much, CJ. Thank you again. I think when I say slow down, ChatGPT was just forced on us by commercial companies. At that time, OpenAI was not as they said they were open, but they were commercial from the start. It was just forced on us. There was not a discussion whether who benefits, what can we get from them and how they will use our data. It was just forced upon us. And then we started to use it without thinking. We think it's just a calculator. In Israel, I will send you articles and hope you read them. ChatGPT is not a calculator. A calculator does not hallucinate. A calculator does not say slavery was good. A calculator does not say colonialism had its benefits. A calculator does not discriminate against Black females. A calculator does not bring forth images of baboons when you search a Black male. A calculator does not. So a calculator, we should stop comparing ChatGPT to a calculator. ChatGPT is much more comprehensive. Sorry, let me catch my breath. I did not say we should not use Gen AI. I did not say we should not use ChatGPT. Under what conditions? How do we validate those knowledge claims? How do we own the content? Who uses our data? And the moment I write a prompt on ChatGPT, I think of Mary and Agnes in Nairobi earning just over $1 a day. So when we use these systems, these commercial capitalistic systems, we need to think of the implications. So we need to slow down. We need to stay informed and stop using things like, with all due respect, Israel, and I love you, we should stop comparing ChatGPT to a calculator. It's much more dangerous. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Paul. I said there was a second question addressed to you. I don't know if you got that. There was Israel, then
Elizabeth asked about slowing down. So
both of them basically has the same question in composite. Okay. So I think we've got to a point where I would like to draw a line at this today. Professor Prinsloo has been kind enough to share the Dropbox to his his presentation with us. This will also be made available on the course page in the course of by later this evening. It will be available on the course page. Chavon has provided a LinkedIn link, and she's willing to connect with anybody who is interested in connecting with her. I'm sure that if you have any questions, one or two of them will be available on the discussion forum in the course of the week, or we'll pass the questions, whatever it is, to them if they can't come on the discussion forum, so that they can provide clearer insights. What I would suggest is that let this conversation continue on our discussion forum, because you know that this is where we'll do more of the learning for this course. But what they have done today is to ignite our interest, shown us another perspective of looking at this hype called ChatGPT. And you agree with me that they did not disappoint. They did not disappoint. A round of applause for the two of them, please. A round of applause for the two of them. A round of applause for the two of them. Thank you so much. And we'll see more of you next week. Thank you, CJ, for obliging our invitation. Thank you, Paul, as always.